know the kind of town where the air smells of fresh-cut hay and the main road curves around a glassy lake. A place where the town hall doubles as the movie theater on Friday nights, and every pickup truck has a story. That's the sort of place where I grew up. It's the kind of town that feels carved out of time, a quiet pocket of the world that somehow missed the rest of the world's frantic rush. Generations of my family have lived here, and I always thought I'd be another one. I loved the slow pace, the way the sun set behind the old clock tower, the feeling that everyone had your back. But like any small town, we had our secrets, and ours was a tune, a specific, haunting, inescapable melody. Every night, without fail, at 11:15 p.m., the town would hold its breath. It wasn't a lockdown of doors and windows, but of silence. The streets would empty, the chatter would cease, and every home would go quiet. We knew we had to be indoors and, more importantly, listening. We had to be listening to the static frequency on our old radios, the one our parents had set for us. It was a low, insistent hum, a white noise that was supposed to mask the other sound, the one that came at exactly 11:15 p.m. and lasted for 12 minutes. The song. No one ever talked about what happened to those who didn't listen. No one ever saw anything, not really. But we all just knew. We just knew that somehow, out there, something was trying to reach us. An eerie, hypnotic melody that felt like it was playing inside your head, not just in the air. We'd all sit there, in our quiet houses, the radio static a warm, fuzzy blanket over the terrifying silence of the town. And then, at 11:27 p.m., just as suddenly as it began, it would stop. I've always wondered why it happens at exactly 11:15 p.m. People here don't talk about it much, but when they do, they get a distant look in their eyes. They say it's just the way things are, that it's been happening for as long as anyone can remember. But I know better. I've heard it. I remember the first time I truly experienced the lure of that terrible music. I was only 10 or 11, just a kid. I had been exploring the old abandoned mine shaft on the edge of town with my friends, Liam and Chloe. The sun had been high in the sky when we first set out, our adventure into the dusty, forbidden tunnels a thrill. Liam, ever the leader, and Chloe, the cautious one, were by my side. Our families had always been close, and that bond made the three of us inseparable. The air in the mine was damp and smelled of rock and moss. Our laughter echoed eerily off the rough-hewn walls as we navigated the twisting passages, our flashlights cutting through the impenetrable darkness. The mines had always felt a little bit spooky to us, and we only ever ventured there when we were all together. I remember vividly the sense of fear mixed with adventure as we wandered deeper. The mine shafts felt like a labyrinth, and the beams of our flashlights were like lifelines, guiding us against the fear of what might lie in the deepest shadows. We had wandered deeper than we ever had before, our curiosity piqued by the whispers of forgotten mining tools and hidden veins of ore. We were having so much fun that we lost track of time completely. And as the sun began to lower and the shadows outside grew long, we finally noticed how late it was. It was already after 6 p.m. All three of us knew the rules about being inside before dark, but especially before that perilous time later at night. As the sun dipped even further, the mine grew darker, the air thick with an unsettling energy. The tunnels seemed to close in around us, the sound of our footsteps echoing ominously in the fading light. Chloe, ever the voice of reason, suggested we head back. "It's getting late," she said, her tone steady but laced with a hint of urgency. "We should find our way back before it gets too dark." Liam and I exchanged a glance, but the thrill of adventure still pulsed through us. "Come on, just a bit further," I urged, though my voice wavered slightly. Chloe hesitated, her eyes reflecting a growing unease as we pressed on. The mine tunnels became a tapestry of shadows, each step echoing with a sound that seemed to whisper warnings. The sounds of the mine shifted, the distant dripping of water replaced by an eerie silence. And then, a faint, sweet sound, like a flute playing from far away, stopped us in our tracks. "What was that?" Liam whispered, his breath catching. Chloe's hand instinctively went to her pocket, her eyes scanning the darkness. "Oh, probably just the wind," she said, though her voice lacked any conviction. But as we stood there, the melody grew louder, more distinct. It moved around us, circling, a siren song with no singer. My heart pounded, and Chloe gripped my hand. "We need to go," she said firmly, turning us toward the exit. As we hurried back, the mine seemed to close in around us, the shadows casting long and sinister shapes. The music followed, always just out of sight, and then a low, mournful hum seemed to echo through the tunnels, sending chills down my spine. Chloe quickened our pace, her usually reserved demeanor giving way to a palpable fear. "Don't listen to it," she urged, her voice soft but urgent. "Just keep moving." We emerged from the mine and saw the streetlights glowing in the distance, the familiar sight of our town a relief. But the memory of that beautiful, terrible song lingered, a haunting reminder of the darkness that lay just beyond our safe haven. As kids, we knew that it wasn't safe to be out at night, but the real danger, and when this specific time was still unknown. I wish it had stayed that way. When we made it to our homes, the streets were already silent and barren. We were safe, but we were late. We all got back to our respective homes just after 10 p.m. Our parents were worried and upset in equal measure. Despite the litany of promised punishments and concerns expressed by them, they were just glad we had gotten back before it had gotten much later. My parents stood outside, their faces etched with worry and relief. "Where have you been?" my mother demanded, her voice sharp with fear. "We were worried sick." We got lost in the mines," I stammered out. My father's expression softened, but only slightly. "You know the rules. You need to be home before dark. Every night." This was far too close. I nodded my head and slumped my shoulders in defeat. He was right, but I still didn't know why. That night, lying in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that we had only glimpsed the edge of something much larger, something the town kept hidden. I knew I wasn't the only one who felt it. Chloe and Liam had heard it too. I was grounded, of course. I wouldn't be playing with my friends anytime soon. I was a bit bummed out, but also unnerved after my experience. I had stayed up later than normal, reading some of my favorite comics to get my mind off it. But just then, I heard the strangest sound. It was a low, melodic hum that seemed to vibrate through the walls. I looked out the window and that's when I heard it. The streets were empty, but there was a presence. It's hard to describe. It wasn't a person or an animal. It was the music. It moved with a strange hypnotic rhythm, like it wasn't entirely in control of its own notes. It radiated a disturbing sense of distortion that made my head ache, and my ears have a difficult time focusing on it. I could feel this overwhelming sense of longing that made my skin crawl. Before I knew it, though, it was over. The music had passed by my house, and I realized I had been staring out my window in a hypnotic daze. It was almost midnight, and I went to sleep, and I didn't tell my parents about the disturbing thing that I had heard. The next morning, the memory of what I had heard lingered like a shadow in my mind, refusing to be shaken. I lied to myself, saying it was all just a dream or a trick of the mind. But the uneasy feeling in my gut told me otherwise. I went through the motions of my day, trying to focus on schoolwork and chores, but my thoughts kept drifting back to that song, whatever it was. It felt wrong, like a crack in the world that shouldn't exist. It wasn't until that evening, when the sun had started to dip below the horizon and cast the town in a pale twilight, that the phone rang. It startled me. I wasn't expecting anybody to call. My heart raced as I picked it up, hesitating for a moment before answering. "Hello?" I said, my voice a little bit shaky. "Hey." Chloe's voice came through the line, as calm as ever, but there was an undercurrent of tension that I couldn't miss. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything." No, I mean, hi, what's up?" I tried to sound casual, but my mind was already racing. Why was she calling me? "Listen, I need to ask you something," she said, her tone shifting into something more serious. "Did you hear anything strange last night? I mean, after what we already heard in the mines, around the time of night everyone is afraid of?" I paused, my grip tightening on the phone. How did she know? "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to play it cool, but my voice betrayed me. "You must have." Liam's voice cut in. He was on the line as well, and his tone was unusually serious. "We know what we heard, and we think you might have heard it too." Liam's here with me," Chloe explained. We all heard something, didn't we?" I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "What are you talking about?" I tried again, but it was no use. "They knew. Somehow, they knew." "Come on, don't make us spell it out," Liam said. "You must have heard it. You know it, and we know it, so just be honest with us." I sighed, the weight of the secret pressing down on me. "Fine," I admitted quietly. "I heard something. I don't know what it was, but it wasn't right. It sounded weird and it felt off, like it didn't belong here." Chloe's breath hitched on the other end of the line. "That's exactly what we heard and felt. It's like it warped the air around it, didn't it? It made your head ache just to listen to it. Yeah, I said, shivering at the memory. Exactly. And this longing, like it was starving for something. Longing, Liam repeated. Yeah, that's the word. Yeah, it felt like it was starving for what, though? That's the question. I've got no idea, I said. But whatever it is, I don't think that it's good. The line suddenly went silent. Not the kind of silence where somebody's waiting for you to speak, but the kind that made you wonder if the connection was still alive. My heart pounded in my ears, each beat louder than the last, as I strained to hear anything. Breathing, movement, anything. And then, suddenly, the silence shattered. Hey kiddo, my mother's voice cut through the line, bright and cheerful, jarringly out of place. Can you come downstairs for a second? Your dad and I need to talk to you about something. I blinked, my mind racing. How did she even know that I was on the phone? Mom, I'm kind of in the middle of something, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Can it wait? No, sweetie, it can't wait, she said, her tone shifting from cheerful to firm. We need to talk to you now. And remember, you're not supposed to be talking to your friends right now, you know the rules. I groaned inwardly. Of course, now of all times they decide to enforce the no phones rule while I was grounded. But this is important, I protested, though I knew it was useless. You don't understand. We mean it, my dad's voice cut in, his deep tones flat and serious. Now, come downstairs. I could feel the weight of their gaze even through the phone, as if they could see me sitting there, clutching the receiver like it was a lifeline. Fine, I muttered, though I knew they couldn't hear me. I'll be right there. I hung up the phone with a shaky hand, my mind racing. What were they going to say? Did they know about the calls, about what we had heard? And how had they even known that I was on the phone? I had been so careful, keeping the volume low, only talking when I was sure they were distracted. But no, they always seemed to know. It was like they had a sixth sense for it, a radar that pinged whenever I tried to step even an inch out of line. I sighed, pushing myself up from the edge of my bed. My legs felt heavy, uncoordinated, as if the conversation had sapped all the strength from them. I made my way downstairs, each step creaking under my feet like a ticking clock. When I reached the bottom, my parents were already in the living room, seated on the couch with their backs straight, their expressions unreadable. Sit down, please, my mother said, her voice soft but commanding. I did, perching on the edge of the armchair across from them, my hands clasped tightly together in my lap. What is this about? I asked, trying to sound calm, though my voice trembled slightly. We know that you've been talking to your friends again, my father said, his voice even but laced with an undercurrent of disappointment, despite what we had agreed. It's not a big deal, I said, trying to brush it off. It is a big deal, my mother cut in, her tone sharp. We've talked about this. You cannot go running off with them into the mines that late. It is not safe. You do not know how worried we were. I swallowed hard, the familiar knot of frustration tightening in my chest. You don't understand, I said, the words spilling out before I could even stop them. This is important. Something's wrong, and we're trying to figure out what it is. My parents exchanged a glance, their expressions unreadable. For a moment, I thought that I saw a flicker of something, concern, maybe, or doubt, but it was gone before I could be sure. We've talked about this, my mother said. There's nothing wrong. There will be nothing wrong, as long as you just stay inside and listen to the radio at night. We need to be vigilant and keep everyone safe. I laughed, the sound bitter and sharp. You think that I meant to get lost? It was a mistake. And how come you won't tell us why everybody in town just sits inside and nobody is allowed out at night? My dad just replied, It's for your own good. You'll understand when you get older. We have to keep you safe. We have to keep everyone safe. I went back upstairs and set the phone that I was still holding down. I walked to the window, staring out into the dark. The streets were quiet, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was listening to me, waiting. And next time, the melody wouldn't just pass by. The night after that call, I found myself standing at my window again, staring out into the same darkness, half expecting to hear it. But there was nothing, just the faint hum of crickets and the radio static from my neighbor's house. I told myself that it was only my imagination running wild, that we had all been spooked by something that could be explained away with science or logic. But the feeling lingered, a shadow in the corner of my mind that I couldn't shake. We didn't hear it again, not directly. But the air in town felt heavier after that summer, as if something had shifted, just beyond the edge of perception. People went about their lives, but there was a quiet unease, A shared glance exchanged when the radio static flickered, or the wind died down too suddenly. That was when our friend from school Mark went missing. He wasn't one of our close friends, but he was the kind of boy who could vanish for a weekend and turn up with a grin and a story about some wild adventure. But this time, there was no story, only silence. His parents found his headphones on the edge of the woods, the wires cut, the earpieces twisted at an odd angle. The police searched, but it was half-hearted. Anyone who was out for an entire night and didn't follow the rules was never expected to come back. After that, the group of us, Chloe, Liam, and I, started to drift apart. We would meet up sometimes, sitting in the same spot by the river where we used to talk about school and life and everything in between. But the conversation would inevitably circle back to Mark, to what we had heard that summer, to the unspoken fear that it had taken him. The laughter grew quieter, the silences longer. Eventually we stopped meeting altogether, each of us retreating into our own lives, our own struggles. At some point, Liam and Chloe reunited and eventually got married. They still lived in town. It seemed like nobody ever left this place. Their home was just a few blocks away from mine, but I rarely spoke to them. It wasn't because I didn't want to. It was more than that. I felt like they had moved on without me, and I couldn't shake the feeling of jealousy, since I had always harbored a secret crush on Chloe. I heard they moved into a house close by to take care of Chloe's father, who was suffering from an illness and needed constant care. Sometimes while out walking, I would see them with him on the sidewalk, but I was too embarrassed to say hello. For my part, even though I felt guilty for trying to forget our friendship, I couldn't forget what we heard. I couldn't stop listening. Every night, I would sit by my radio, scanning the frequencies, the yard, the stretch of woods beyond the houses. I told myself it was just a habit, just paranoia, but deep down, I knew better. I was waiting for it to come back, to hear if it would show itself again. And when it didn't, I couldn't decide if I was relieved or disappointed. Years went by, and the memory of that summer faded into the kind of half-remembered terror that feels more like a dream than reality. But on quiet nights when the house was still and the world felt too large, I would catch myself standing at the window again, searching the darkness for something that didn't belong. And sometimes, in the flicker of a light or the bend of a tree, I could swear that I heard it, just for a moment, just out of the corner of my mind. But when I turned to listen, there was nothing ever there. Or so I told myself. The truth was, I had heard it again, more than once, always in the periphery, always gone when I turned to listen. It was a trick of the light, I had said, a trick of the mind. But the longing, the same nagging longing, lingered in the air, sharp and relentless, and I couldn't help but wonder, had it ever really left? Or had it just been waiting, biding its time until the moment was right? We all know it exists, but we pretend like it doesn't. We try to act as if we have a strict curfew, and that there's nothing lurking outside, but those who are too brave or naive, thinking that it's all just a big joke, they don't last very long. They always end up being taken away, just like those who fall victim by accident. I couldn't help but wonder which one Mark was. Those of us who are still here know that whatever that melody is, it's out there, stalking and hunting, looking for anyone who isn't listening. Disappearances are still frequent, especially for such a small town. The police have a whole song and dance for anybody who goes missing from the outside, but when it is a resident, well, it's more of a case where the families of the victims are reprimanded for not having known better. No one knows why the window of time is so mercifully brief, almost as if it has to be, and just as suddenly as it starts, it's over. By 11:27 p.m., the streets are quiet again, and the town feels normal. But it's not normal. It never was. People here have learned to live with it. They listen to the static, and pretend that it's not happening. When I was a bit older and I knew more, I asked my parents why we didn't just move, but they never gave me a good answer. All they said was, it wouldn't do any good. It has to be here. It is safer for everyone, if it's here. It didn't make sense. I know that people can get attached to places, but it felt crazy to me. I couldn't just pretend that this was all normal. Not after what I heard, not after what I felt. There was something out there, and it's worse than anyone would believe. And then, after years of waiting, I finally heard it again. It was a normal night, at least as normal as nights could be in my town. I was getting ready to go to bed when I noticed that my favorite antique radio was outside on the porch. The time was 11:13 p.m. I had no idea if the creature did anything to objects, but I didn't want to find out. I had never left the radio outside before, and when it did not respond to my shouted calls for a return, I had to do something dangerous and stupid to save it. and so I rushed outside to retrieve it. I raced out to grab my radio, and I froze when I sensed a presence. As I was scrambling back to my door, the radio's dial suddenly began to spin wildly. I felt paralyzed, and then I thought I heard it again. It was different this time, louder and more overwhelming than before. Its presence seemed to fill the entire street, pressing against the houses like an unseen pressure. I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't work. I was frozen in place, my breath caught in my throat. To my horror, the melody seemed to finally regard me. The radio jumped out of my hands and fell to the ground, fortunate to have evaded whatever interest the thing might have had with it. The music's source twisted unnaturally in my direction, its distorted melody coalescing into more recognizable notes. The chilling sound forced a scream out of me as I beheld the blasphemous impossibility. I turned and sprinted away, screaming like a maniac, my heart hammering against my ribcage with such force that each beat felt like it might crack my chest open. The sound of its pursuit echoed behind me, a wet, sloppy hum like a monstrous symphony gliding across the ground. Its deafening roar filled the air, shaking the ground beneath my feet as I ran for my life. I did not know if I could get away. No one that I knew had been outside and survived. I ducked into an alley, my hand shaking as I pressed myself against the wall. My breath came in short and sharp inhales, and I could feel sweat dripping down my face. I didn't dare look around the corner. I didn't dare move. And then I heard a familiar voice crying out, "Mom, please come back inside. We need to go now." The harrowing screams that came next sliced through the air, piercing and full of terror. My heart raced as I strained to see who was making them, but all I could make out were shadowy figures caught in the open. The screams were short, sharp, and then they were swallowed by the night. The deafening silence that followed only added to the fear weighing down on me. I stayed pressed against the wall, trying to make myself as small and invisible as possible. The darkness seemed to come alive with every creak and rustle, amplifying my fear. I held my breath until I heard the sound of the creature moving away, and then, just like that, it was gone. But the eerie stillness lingered, haunting me even after the clock struck 11:27 p.m. The streets were once again quiet, but my nerves were still on edge. I stumbled back to my house, every step feeling like a race against time. My radio waited anxiously at the door, and I bolted inside with it, seeking shelter. The horrible night had left me shaken but grateful to be alive. Whatever that thing is, it does not belong in this world. It is not of this time or place, and its presence is so unsettling it makes your mind ache just to catch a glimpse of it. No one can tell of its origins. Maybe they are lost in the depths of history, but whatever its history, it remains, always there, lurking in the shadows every night without fail. The encounter left me shaken, but I wasn't ready for the truth that would be revealed. The screams that I heard that night and my miraculous survival suddenly made sense when I discovered who the real victims were. The realization hit me like a hammer to the chest. Liam and Chloe Morris, along with a woman named Brenda Peterson, were missing. The names echoed in my mind, refusing to settle. Liam and Chloe had been out there that night. The chilling cry from a woman's voice, Chloe, calling out to her mother, who had wandered out of their home at the fateful moment. I couldn't breathe. The air seemed to thicken, pressing against my lungs as if the darkness itself had taken on a physical form. The radio, sensing my distress, stayed close, its static a soft, uneasy hum. But even its presence couldn't comfort me. The truth was clawing its way to the surface, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. I stepped outside. The air was colder now, biting at my skin. The streets were already empty again, but the shadows seemed to move on their own accord, twisting into shapes that made my blood run cold. I walked without a destination, my feet carrying me on autopilot while my mind raced. How could this be happening? How could they be gone? We were supposed to be okay. The thoughts sent a chill down my spine. Whatever that thing was, it had taken them, and it had left me alive. Why? The questions swirled in my head like a storm, each one sharper and more terrifying than the last. I found myself at the edge of the town square, staring at the old oak tree where we had held so many gatherings. Its branches creaked in the wind, a mournful sound that seemed to whisper their names. Liam, Chloe, how could this have happened to you? I walked numbly back home, almost heedless of the encroaching hour. I stepped back inside, and the radio hummed softly. I couldn't process everything that had happened. The creature wasn't just some mindless beast. It was calculated. I realized that I might be the only one who had heard it, and lived to tell the tale. At that point, I did the one thing you probably think that everybody should have done by now. I left my hometown. I moved to the largest city that I could reach to get away from it all. My parents didn't approve. In fact, they tried to tell me that I couldn't go. I was so desperate to get out of there that I had to sneak away in the early morning when they couldn't interfere. I never understood why we all stayed there and tried to ignore the eldritch nightmare that haunted us at night. It seemed so simple, and I felt better at first. The city felt alive with the hum of traffic and the distant chatter of people during the day, a cacophony that made me feel safe, anonymous. Indeed, I thought that I had left the nightmare behind, that the creature was just a memory, a relic of a past that I could bury. My new apartment is a cozy studio on the 5th floor, with a view of the bustling streets below, high enough where looking out the window does not fill me with dread at night. But unfortunately, something happened last night that has shattered the fragile illusion of my peaceful transition. On the first night in my new place, I sat on the edge of my bed, flipping through a magazine to distract myself from the creeping unease that had settled into the pit of my stomach. The clock on the nightstand read 11:05 p.m. I told myself that I was being paranoid, that the creature was gone, that I was safe now. But the weight of the past lingered, a shadow in the corner of my mind that I couldn't shake. By 11:15 p.m., the city outside my window was eerily quiet. The usual sounds of traffic and distant music had faded, replaced by an unsettling stillness. I tried to focus on the magazine, but my eyes kept drifting toward the window, the darkness beyond the glass pressing in on me. And then I heard it, a soft, tentative melody against the pane. My heart skipped a beat. I froze, the magazine slipping from my fingers and falling to the floor. The sound was light, almost imperceptible, but it sent a chill coursing through my veins. I told myself it was just a stray branch, a bird, anything but what I feared. But then it came again. Another note, this time more insistent. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. My eyes were fixed on the window, the darkness beyond it, seeming to pulse with a life of its own. The music stopped, and for a moment there was nothing but silence. And then a faint scratching sound, like claws on glass. My heart sank. I knew that sound, and I knew what it meant. Slowly, with my legs trembling beneath me, I rose from the bed and approached the window. My hand reached for the curtain, hesitated, and then with a deep and shaky breath, I pulled it back. What I saw made me freeze in terror. The creature was perched on the fire escape outside my window, its twisted form silhouetted against the moonlit sky. Its eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and its presence seemed to fill the room, pressing in on me with an unspeakable horror. I tried to scream, but the sound caught in my throat. The creature's head had tilted to the side. Its gaze locked on mine, and I felt a wave of dread wash over me. It was here. It had followed me, and then, as if in slow motion, its mouth opened, revealing rows of jagged teeth, and it let out a low and guttural growl. The sound shattered the paralysis that held me in place. I stumbled back, my voice finally breaking free in a raw and terrified scream. The creature's form seemed to blur and shift, its presence filling the room with an unspeakable darkness. And then everything went black. I regained consciousness, and I know that it's not over. There's no escape from this thing that has followed me. I consider what my parents had said when I asked them why we never moved, and then with dawning horror, I realized the truth of their words. It is safer for everyone if it's here. They didn't mean that it was safer for us. They meant it was safer for everyone else. They knew the danger, and they stayed to keep it there. And now, in my ignorance, I have made a huge mistake. Somehow it knew that I left. It has followed me here, to a place where over 1 million people will soon know about its existence, and maybe more if it moves beyond that. My hands tremble as I write this, the weight of my mistake crushing me. The city outside my window is still quiet, the kind of silence that feels heavy and wrong. The clock on the nightstand reads 11:52 p.m. Less than an hour has passed since I heard it, since it found me. I can feel its presence, a cold, oppressive shadow lingering just beyond the edge of perception. In my irrational terror, I tried to barricade myself inside, shoving furniture against the door, but it feels useless. It got in before, and it can get in again. My mind races, trying to think of what to do next, but every thought is clouded by fear. I keep telling myself to stay calm, to think clearly, but the terror clawing at my chest makes it impossible. Even though I know it won't come for me until tomorrow, I can't shake the feeling that it's already here, lurking and watching my every move. Memories of past encounters with this entity flooded my mind, causing an overwhelming sense of fear and unease. I try to rationalize and convince myself that I'm safe for now, but deep down, I know it's only a matter of time before it comes for me once again. The apartment feels smaller now, the walls closing in on me. I've turned on every light, hoping to chase away the darkness, but the shadows cast by the lamp seem to twist and writhe on the walls. I've tried calling for help, but my phone has no signal, as if something has severed the connection to the outside world. I pace back and forth, my eyes darting toward the window, half expecting to see it perched there again. The fire escape creaks faintly, and I freeze, my breath catching in my throat. It's just the wind, I tell myself, but the words ring hollow. I stop in front of the mirror above the dresser and stare at my reflection. My face is pale, my eyes wide and haunted. I look like a stranger, someone that I don't recognize. The person staring back at me is fractured, broken by the realization of what I've unleashed. I'm so sorry. This is my fault. I brought it here. I didn't know. Liam, Chloe, forgive me, please. For your own safety, stay inside between 11:15 p.m. and 11:27 p.m. By now, it might not be safe wherever you are as well. Hey everyone, do not forget to subscribe our channel. We will come back with more horror and scary real stories, so stay tuned with Mr. Clown.